Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
The greatest World Cup final in living memory had everything. Comebacks, penalties, the best players producing the best moments, and tactical brilliance from both managers, but ended with Lionel Messi's Argentina winning on penalties after a pulsating normal time and even more exciting extra time. The XG after extra time showed that Argentina did create more, but what were Argentina's tactics, and how did Deschamps' intelligent tactics bring France so close to the comeback? In this video we take a look. We'll begin with how Argentina took a commanding lead before analysing the France comeback. Argentina were aggressive with the ball from the start, and France defended in their lopsided 4-4-2, with Mbappe for the most part staying high on the left and not tracking back as much, with Giroud dropping deeper and Rabiot being central but to the left hand side, with Tchouaméni shifting across and Griezmann looking to drop in when possible. And Argentina had a shape that could vary depending on what weaknesses they wanted to exploit in the French shape, particularly in the first half. The first great decision that Scaloni made that he'd flirted with throughout the duration of the tournament was playing Di Maria on the left hand side rather than the right hand side where we're accustomed to seeing him. And one of the ways Scaloni brought the best out of Di Maria was by first attacking down the right hand side. France's left hand side tends to be slightly weaker because Mbappe does stick higher up the pitch for the most part. So Argentina were aggressive with the positioning of their fullbacks, and down the right hand side Molina would push up early outside of Mbappe. And although Mbappe did track a lot more than we've seen him throughout this tournament, his attacking instincts still took over. This was made worse by the fact that these regions down the right hand side are where Messi likes to primarily operate, and this overload on the right hand side could be exacerbated even more because De Paul also likes to operate in these regions, and we can see this in Messi and De Paul's heat maps. This caused problems as if Rabiot stayed central, there would be an easy overload against Hernandez, but when he came across it would also force Tchouaméni to come across in order to compensate for this overload on this side. And where in prior matches, Griezmann has been highly effective in immediately dropping in, allowing France to keep their shape, today he was more often caught high up the pitch, as when Argentina were building up, he could be drawn to the man who would drop deep to receive the ball from the centre-backs initially. So in this gap, McAllister was willing to push much higher up the pitch, which would force Jules Koundé to move infield, whilst Tagliafico was also looking to move high. As a result, Argentina consistently had the opportunity to find the switch and Di Maria out on the left-hand side. So for France, we see that Mbappe is high on the left-hand side, and Argentina are beginning the overload with Molina as well as De Paul on this right-hand side, meaning that both Rabiot and Tchouaméni are dragged over to try and cover. Also note McAllister is already pushing up into this half space, drawing Koundé infield. So now Messi finds the switch and Di Maria is 1 versus 1 with Koundé. And Di Maria had the beating of Koundé from the start of the match, and was threatening a man-of-the-man performance, with the joint most dribbles, key passes, as well as generally looking like a threat, despite playing less than 90 minutes. But hypothetically, in these situations, Dembele could drop deep to cover Di Maria. But that was only hypothetical because once again, Argentina seemed to have an answer. When they were on the ball, in controlled possession, they shifted into an extremely brave 2-2-6, with Tagliafico often pushing high to create a front six that would look something like this. And the way the width was used was different, because down the right, Molina's main role was to tie up Hernandez, which would then give Messi more space in these right-hand side regions, or allow him to drift infield with De Paul coming out wide, if he saw fit, so basically gave them a lot of flexibility. But on the left-hand side, the role of Tagliafico was to look to occupy Ousmane Dembele, which would then provide Argentina with the opportunity to at least initially find Di Maria as the free man, so that he would have a running start when a man, either Koundé or Dembele, eventually looked to track him. So the centre-backs are the only men back, a double pivot of De Paul and Fernandez, whilst Molina provides the width on the right with Messi joining him in these regions, and we see that Tagliafico is infield, meaning that Di Maria is the free man furthest left. And here in a more transitional situation, we still see similar principles, as Tagliafico is tearing forward so that he'll always be occupying Dembele, whilst Koundé now has 2 men to worry about. This means that Di Maria would always be potentially free to receive, and then have the 1 versus 1 against Koundé. And we also see this in the penalty, as once again, we have that front 6, Tagliafico drags in Dembele, and Koundé is on McAllister, meaning that Di Maria is the free man out wide. Intelligent play then finds him so that he's 1 versus 1 against Dembele, which as we now know leads to a penalty. But this shape led to other problems for France, because at times, Griezmann was operating as a more traditional attacking midfielder. But even when he was initially deeper, when Fernandes would drop in to pick up the ball, Griezmann could look to press up. This could then lead to problems, as when Argentina had the ball on the right, both Rabiot and Tchouaméni would be dragged across, once again because they had so many numbers on this right hand side. And this would now leave space in the midfield, that if Argentina played quick passes, could usually find McAllister bursting forward, then lead into problems higher up the pitch. So here we see that problem, as France had been attacking, meaning Griezmann is high and can't track back. The ball had come down Argentina's right hand side, drawing in both Tchouaméni and Rabiot, and Molina was able to find the pass to Alvarez, and you can see the space that has developed just in this region here, where Alvarez can receive and potentially play it wide or drive at the defense. But even in more controlled situations, Argentina's shape could allow them to dominate the midfield. This is because firstly, with the wingbacks being aggressive on the outside, particularly Molina, Messi basically operated in a free role as an attacking midfielder, and when they switched to double pivot, it would allow McAllister to shift higher up the pitch, so that they always had perhaps a 4 versus 2, or if Rabiot was able to tuck in, or Griezmann was able to come back in, a 4 versus 3, still allowing them to keep possession for the most part. And Tagliafico could still push wide, but when he came infield, he would occupy an extra midfielder, again helping that advantage and Argentina to keep the ball more easily. But you don't win a World Cup for being a bad manager, so Didier Deschamps had a few tricks up his sleeve. A double substitution before halftime is almost unthinkable, but Deschamps did just that, bringing on Kolo Muani for Dembele, as well as Thuram for Giroud, which allowed them to alter their defensive shape. Firstly, Thuram would now come out as the left winger, with Muani as the right winger, and Mbappe moving to centre forward. So this would mean that even if Griezmann was caught high up the pitch, Tchouaméni and Rabiot would be a genuine dedicated double pivot, with Thuram a genuine left winger even when defending. So it was much harder to overload that left hand side. And even when they did, it wouldn't be both Rabiot and Tchouaméni being dragged across, but rather just one man, and Griezmann could still drop in to make it more of a 4-5-1. At the same time, with Molina being so high on the attack, the pace of Mbappe, as well as Thuram, who's not slow himself, was dangerous on the counter-attack. But the substitution changed so much more than just the defensive structure, as we even saw France's possession rise from 40% before the double substitution to 50% afterwards. So let's dig into what France did in possession. Whenever possible, France looked to build up with a back 3, as Argentina were defending with a front 2 at the minimum, so that gave them one advantage. And Koundé would be the man to tuck in, whilst Fernandes pushed higher on the left hand side. Tchouaméni, as we've seen throughout the tournament, was depended upon to be the single pivot, whilst in ideal situations both Rabiot and Griezmann would push higher up the pitch. But we did see Rabiot being much more willing to drop in to be the second pivot alongside Tchouaméni during this match. And one thing that Argentina did well on the defensive end of things was protect the center of the pitch, primarily through using the cover shadows of the two forwards, although Alvarez was much more willing to apply pressure onto the center backs. And when he did apply pressure, the pivots were willing to back this up. Argentina know about the danger of Mbappe in the attack, but they also recognize that a lot of France's danger throughout the tournament has come down the right hand side, with one play in particular. And that play is Dembele, rather than staying high up the pitch, instead looking to come deep towards the ball, to drag his fullback with him, opening up space for Griezmann to run in behind, for either Dembele to then pass, or Koundé to directly find. Argentina dealt with this by using pressure. Down Argentina's right, Messi didn't do much pressing, but as soon as the ball was with Varane, Alvarez would look to apply pressure on him so that he couldn't make the difficult progressive pass for the most part. And by having a workhorse like Di Maria, as soon as Koundé received, Di Maria was straight on him, looking to cover the passing lane if possible. And when Dembele did drop, Tagliafico knew his clear instructions, which were to drop with him and remain as touch tight as he could, so that if Di Maria couldn't cover the passing lane, when Dembele did receive, he didn't have the space to turn and play a pass. In addition, with the centre being protected so well, when Griezmann did still look to make these runs, McAllister would be disciplined enough to track him. So here when Dembele dropped deep, Tagliafico is already on him, and Dembele goes backwards and Di Maria is willing to press immediately. At the same time, McAllister is looking to cover Griezmann. And down their right, Argentina had a plan as well, because they knew that Messi wasn't really going to be aggressively pressing the centre-back in this region, as we saw with Alvarez and Di Maria. So instead, Messi's role would be to look to cut off the pass into the central lane. And if the ball did work its way wide, the work rate of De Paul was extremely important, as he would have to cover across for Messi. Whether this was to Hernandez, or Rabiot looking to make the run in behind, much like Griezmann, when Mbappe did drop deep. And with Hernandez being high on the left-hand side, and Mbappe initially not having that much success when he was playing wide, we did often see Hernandez look to provide all of the width, and Mbappe be the second forward right alongside Giroud. Having the extra man up there would also allow Rabiot to drop in alongside Tchouaméni. And especially when the Argentina pivots were backing up the press of the forwards, Mbappe and Giroud would both look to drop in between the lines to receive the ball, and the centre-backs were highly aggressive, looking to follow, despite leaving gaps in the defence, with Argentina hoping that the pressure from the centre-forwards would make the passes into the gap too difficult to find. But before the substitutions from Deschamps, one thing we did see was that with Hernandez so high, Argentina could exploit the space behind him on the transition, which is what we saw in the second half. So another adaptation that Deschamps brought us was Camavinga to left back, as he is naturally a midfielder, so tended to be more conservative rather than overlapping. But let's dig further into what the substitutions brought, and they weren't a magic formula that suddenly made France the better team, but rather tactical tweaks that brought rewards long term. The first thing it brought them was flexibility, as on the defensive end of things, Thuram could remain wide when they needed. But Mbappe doesn't particularly like being confined as a centre forward, but instead likes to drift around. So what we could see is when France had the ball higher up, he could still shift to the left hand side if he saw fit, whilst Thuram could then move to centre forward, which is a secondary position. And that freedom, particularly when Hernandez was still on, would allow Mbappe to drift around the pitch as he saw fit, as there was a centre forward and a man providing the width. But Kolo Muani brought on so much more than just pressing intensity when he came on, as he was a danger down the right, but when Coman came on, his threat increased even more. It meant that France could effectively attack with a 4-2-4 that could look something like this, but any of these three were comfortable moving to the left-hand side when needed, with the others able to be the centre forwards who'd make man-to-man situations with the centre-back, as we saw in the situation that led up to the penalty. But when the width was provided by Camavinga or Hernandez, this freed Mbappe even further, as once again there was width and both centre-backs were occupied. So we did see Mbappe looking to drop deeper and deeper to get on the ball and really impact the game, which he did do as the match wore on. So here we see the two forwards ahead of Mbappe occupying the defenders, whilst the wide man can push up the left if he so wishes, giving Mbappe more time to be turned and face the goal. But other advantages this did provide them is that when the ball went wide, they now had more numbers attacking the box, in addition to the fact that they could go longer with more men around the ball. Overall, this was an absolute World Cup classic that will live long in the memory, ending with Leo Messi finally getting his World Cup. For the manager tactical score, both managers were outstanding, consistently making so many tactical tweaks that it couldn't all be included in one video, so drop anything else you noticed down below. Scaloni's dominant initial tactics were outdone by the sheer brilliance of Mbappe, meaning he still earns an 8.5. But I thought Deschamps' adjustments were more praiseworthy and literally turned the game around, giving him a 9. But drop your ratings down below, and thank you all for joining me for the World Cup. More videos coming when the regular season resumes, so hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.